Good morning, everyone. I would like to extend a warm welcome to you for joining us in today's webinar. This session promises to be impactful and exciting as we unpack our topic, Demystifying Conformance to Clause 4.4 of the ISO 27001-2022 standard. My name is Yvette Klu, and I'll be your moderator for this session. We have a few housekeeping rules. If you have any question during the course of the presentation, please feel free to type it in the Q&A chat. We will address that during the question and answer session. Also, during that session, that is after the end of the presentation, you'll be given the opportunity to speak where you raise your hand and you'll be unmuted to ask your questions. Thank you once again for taking time out of your busy schedules to join us here today. To officially begin, I'd like to invite our host, Mrs. Sewa Jobenuku. She is the partner for the Technology and Transformation Service Line at Deloitte, Ghana. She'll be giving us the opening remarks. Mrs. Sewa, please, you have our attention.
Thank you, Yvette. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone here. I'd like to first apologize for the late start of the program. We had a bit of a technical problem, but that's been resolved. And thank you for your patience. It's a real pleasure to welcome you all to this special webinar organized in the commemoration of the National Cybersecurity Awareness Month. On behalf of our team and partners in Deloitte, I would like to thank you again for taking the time of your busy schedules to be here today. Whether you are a cybersecurity professional, an ISO standard implementer, or an auditor, or simply someone who is just passionate about information security, your presence here reflects your commitment to strengthen and promote information security in your respective spheres. Today's session focuses on a very important yet often misunderstood aspect of the ISO 27001 standard. We encourage you to take notes and feel free to contribute and ask questions in the Q&A session. This is an opportunity not just to learn, but also to share ideas and experiences that help us all grow in this field. So, sit back, relax, and get ready for an enlightening session that will bridge theory and practice in conforming to Clause 4.4 of ISO standards. Thank you and have a good time.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Sewa, for that warm welcome address. I believe this has set the tone for the next sessions to come. Next, we have our guest of honor. He is the Acting Director General for the Cybersecurity Authority. He is no other than Mr. Divine Selassie Agbeti. He will be giving us a speech in relation to cybersecurity. So, Mr. Divine, you are warmly welcome. Please, you have the floor.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, please, we can.
Okay. Unfortunately, my acting AG couldn't attend because he's on an assignment, a government assignment outside the country. So my name is Jake France. I'm the head of Cybersecurity Technology Standards with CSA, and I'm stepping in for Sir Divine Agbeti. I have a keynote address which he was supposed to read. So if you don't mind indulging me, I'd like to read that. Ladies and gentlemen, good day. It is a pleasure to address you, distinguished colleagues and industry stakeholders, on a topic that is immensely relevant to our collective work. I wish to take this opportunity to commend Deloitte for the laudable initiative for organizing this webinar in observance of the ongoing National Cybersecurity Awareness Month. This is an example that truly the pursuit of a resilient cybersecurity ecosystem rests on the fundamental principle of collaboration. Distinguished colleagues, in recent years, Ghana has made notable strides in strengthening its cyberspace. Through the enactment of the Cybersecurity Act 2020, Act 38, establishing the Cybersecurity Authority, we have institutionalized a robust governance framework to protect our digital infrastructure, promote public trust, and support innovation in the digital economy. Although this sets a solid foundation for the progression of our digital transformation and ensures that citizens enjoy the advantages of the digital age, there are still threats to our digital ambitions. Digitalization has presented malicious actors with an array of opportunities to increase the scale and sophistication of cyber threats. Data from the National Computer Emergency Response Team, CERT-GH, Cybercrime Cyber Incident Reporting Point of Contact, shows that as of September this year, we have recorded 3,286 confirmed incidents, resulting in the loss of 19.3 million Ghana cedis. In the first half of the year, we recorded no fewer than 20 instances of attacks on the infrastructure of institutions across the various sectors, including website defacement, impersonation, and malicious redirection. We also noted at least 35 instances of exposure of sensitive data from several institutions on the dark web. The government sector was most impacted, accounting for 43% of the discoveries, followed by banking and finance, and then the health sector with 19 and 16 respectively. These developments underscore the urgent need for continued vigilance, collaboration, and coordinated incident response capabilities across all sectors of our economy. Ladies and gentlemen, to effectively mitigate these risks and adequately protect ourselves and organizations, it is extremely important to adopt structured and approved frameworks that protect critical information infrastructure and promote information security. The ISO 27001 standard is one such framework which is recognized and accepted globally. This standard serves as the blueprint for establishing and maintaining an effective information security management system. Clause 4.4 of the ISO 27001 standard serves as the very backbone of the framework, requiring organizations to establish, implement, maintain, and continually improve its information security management system. This means that organizations must put in place processes that ensure constant, robust protection of its information systems. In essence, your organization's information and cybersecurity efforts should be a part of its day-to-day operations, ensuring protection against unforeseen attacks, enabling effective and early warning mechanisms, and building your organization's security posture. This may seem like a simple task. However, the practicality of implementing Clause 4.4 often presents challenges. The Cybersecurity Act 2020, resonating with this clause of the ISO 27001 standard, serves as a guide as it institutionalizes the same principles of governance, accountability, and continuous improvement. The Directive for the Protection of Critical Information Infrastructure, CII, which operationalizes sections 35 to 40 of the Act 1038, mandates all CII owners to establish baseline cybersecurity requirements necessary for ensuring the security of their critical systems, and establishes the requirements and procedures for incident response. Furthermore, the CSA launched a risk assessment framework this year to complement this directive. The framework equips CII owners to navigate the uncertainties of the future and make informed decisions amidst potential and emerging threats. Together, these two guidelines provide practical steps for organizations to develop and improve their information security management systems by mandating incident reporting timeframes, cybersecurity audits, and periodic compliance assessments, all which ensure a proactive cybersecurity culture. Ladies and gentlemen, the CSA is currently developing a certification scheme to establish codes of practice and standards for cybersecurity products and services, as well as monitor compliance with codes of practice and standards pursuant to Section 4D of the Act 1038. By aligning this local certification requirements with international best practices, the certification scheme will promote accountability and assist organizations in implementing Clause 4.4. The CSA further provides a guide for organizations seeking to implement Clause 4.4 through its licensing and accreditation regime. In March 2023, the CSA commenced the regulatory regime of licensing and accrediting cybersecurity service providers, CSP, cybersecurity establishments, CE, and cybersecurity professionals, CPs. The rationale of this exercise is to certify that these entities offer their services in accordance with approved standards and procedures in line with domestic requirements and industry best practices. As organizations engage the services of licensed and accredited CSPs, CEs, and CPs, accountability, steady improvement of their information systems, and compliance to domestic and international best practices are adhered to, thus conforming to Clause 4.4. Distinguished colleagues, the month of October is dedicated to cybersecurity awareness. This year, the National Cybersecurity Awareness Month, affectionately known as NACSAM, organized by the CSA, is on the theme, Building a Safe, Informed, and Accountable Digital Space. The theme is inspired by the need to improve national consciousness on the implications of cyber threats, promote informed digital engagements through critical thinking, and to promote data rights and accountability as the pillar of Ghana's data transformation agenda. Through engagements such as these, the stakeholders, such as those gathered in today's webinar, can share opinions and suggestions towards achieving our collective goal of not only developing Ghana's cybersecurity resilience, but operationalizing the industry forum of which the CSA launched in 2024, pursuant to Section 81 of the Act 1038, and is currently putting in place measures for its implementation. Ladies and gentlemen, I urge you to take advantage of the deliberations from this webinar and other engagements of this nature taking place throughout the month. I also wish to remind you that the journey towards a resilient cybersecurity ecosystem is not one of mere compliance, but of collaboration, continuous learning, synergy in the industry, and a shared commitment to implementing effective strategies that strengthen our collective defense. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir, for delivering the speech on behalf of the Acting Director General for CSA. We noted that you highlighted on the statistics of the state of cybersecurity in our country and the urgency for the need to mitigate this risk through the implementation of the ISO 27001 standard. We really appreciate the work the Cybersecurity Authority is doing in the cybersecurity space in our country. Next, we'll move on to the main agenda for today, which is the presentation on the topic Demystifying Conformance to Clause 4.4 of the ISO 27001-2022 standard. Please permit me to share my screen. So our presenters for today is myself and also Mr. Sharif Issa, Senior Manager for the Cyber Unit in the Technology and Transformation Service Line at Deloitte, Ghana. Shall we begin? So for this discussion, we'll be looking at the changes in clause 4.4 of the ISO 27001 standard. We'll also look at similar requirements in other ISO standards. We'll understand the requirements of clause 4.4 and how organizations can conform to the requirements of this clause. Now, clause 4.4 is part of the mandatory clauses of the ISO 27001 standard. Now, on the face of the document, it might look like a small and short, simple requirement, but it is rather the heartbeat of the information security management system. Why do we say this? This is because it tells us how the entire system is to be built, managed, and improved. Now, when we take a look at the 2013 version of the standard, it requires that organizations establish, implement, maintain, and continually improve the ISMS in accordance with the requirements of the international standard. Now, looking at the 2022 version, we see that the wording in itself has not changed, but rather the meaning of it has been heightened. The standard now requires that organizations integrate their information security management system in their everyday business processes and not run it as a standalone system. Hence, we see the inclusion, the processes needed, and their interactions. Now, this requirement is not new in other ISO standards as they are present in clause 4.4 of these standards. Let's take a few examples. Now, when we take the service management system, which is the 20,000 standard, the business continuity management system, which is the 22,301, and the quality management system, we can see that as part of clause 4.4, it has the inclusion of the processes needed and their interactions. So it's not surprising that in the 2022 version of the standard, this requirement is being or has been included in it. This shows us that the ISMS has a connected system-wide approach where the processes affect one another in some way or the other. Now, let's try to understand what clause 4.4 entails. We can divide it into two parts. The first part is the establishment, implementation, maintenance, and continual improvement of the ISMS in accordance with the requirements of this document. Now, this entails that organizations set up their ISMS by defining their scope, their context, and risk. Also need to implement their processes and controls, ensure that they are working effectively through monitoring and reviews, and strengthen their ISMS through the feedback gotten, findings, and performance reviews that are being conducted. Now, let's take the second part, identification of the ISMS processes needed and their interactions in accordance with the requirements. So this requirement means that the ISMS must have defined interlinked processes, not just policies and isolated tasks. Let's break this down even further. When we take the identification of the ISMS processes needed, we see that these are the activities that make up the ISMS function, such as the context and scope, risk assessment and treatment, internal audits. Now, for these processes, clear objectives need to be set. Those responsible for undertaking the activities and ensuring that they are being done effectively must be defined, and records showing that they are operating effectively must be documented. Now, let's take the second part, which is the identification of their interactions. So the standard expects that organizations understand how these processes are linked. Let's take some examples. When we take the risk assessment process, it feeds into the identification of controls, which leads to our treatment process. When we take the monitoring of the results of the ISMS, it feeds into the management reviews that we conduct. And our internal audit findings also feeds into the corrective actions that organizations decide to undertake. So we see here that the strength of our ISMS really depends on how well our processes are interacting, not on how many documents that an organization has. Now, how can organizations really conform to the requirement of clause 4.4? I'd like to hand over to my colleague, Mr. Sharif Issa, to take this part. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Yvette, for this. So as Yvette has mentioned, we basically going to look at how we conform to this requirement. And as Yvette did, she divided the requirement into two. So I'll be dealing with the two parts of the requirement, which is, and for the first one is the establishment, implementation, maintenance, and continually improving the ISMS in line with the requirement of the standard. I think Mr. Franz and Yvette all mentioned that clause 4.4 is the heartbeat of the ISMS. I will add another adjective. It is also the spine of the ISMS because, I mean, the key requirements are certain in a single or tiny line as Yvette rightly described. Now, if you look at the construct of the standard, i.e. the first part, as we've already mentioned, the establishment, the implementation, the maintenance, and continual improvement, these forms what we call the PDCA cycle or the Deming cycle. So the establishment is basically talking about planning for the ISMS, which clause 6 of the standard talks about. The implementation talks about the doing, operationalizing the ISMS, which clause 8 takes care of it. Then maintenance or checking is what clause 9 of the standard talks about, and continual improvement, which is the act, which is what clause 10 of the standard is dealing with. So typically we see that it's only clause 4, 5, 7, which are missing here. It doesn't mean they are not important. They're very, very important. But as we indicated, these requirements are the heartbeat and the spine of the ISMS. Now, for us to delve into this conversation, at a point of implementing your ISMS, you cannot conform to this requirement, especially when you are implementing your ISMS. You are within your implementation phase, let me put it this way. When you are within your initial implementation phase of your ISMS, you cannot meet this requirement in its entirety. Because at that point, you might only be establishing the ISMS, or you might only be implementing it. You might not have gotten to the stage of maintaining or continually improving it. So you can achieve full conformity to this requirement after you've operationalized the ISMS. So basically, that's what it is. So typically on projects, especially when we are doing implementation, we don't worry ourselves much about this requirement, especially as an initial implementation, because obviously you are at 0 at that point in time. So basically, this is what we need to take note of. Now, looking at it in its entirety, the PDCA I've talked about. Now, if you want to meet these requirements, I mean, this individual requirement, that is 6, 8, 9, and 10, how do we achieve or attain conformance to these requirements? One, in the establishment phase, which the standard talks about, or the planning, which clause 6 also deals with, it's a matter of defining our risk assessment process. That's the first thing. How do we undertake risk assessment? That's the first thing. Then 2, we define risk treatment process. If risk has been identified, how do we treat our risk? Then proceed to document these processes. These processes that we define, the risk assessment process, the risk treatment process, we need to get them documented. Then we also need to establish our information security objectives, or the ISMS objectives. The ISMS or the ISMS we are establishing, what do you seek to achieve with that ISMS? It's very, very important. Without that objective, then it's good there's no ISMS, because you are doing the ISMS too, or you are implementing the ISMS or adopting ISMS, to be able to achieve certain objectives. So we need to establish information security objectives and how you're going to achieve these objectives. Very, very important. Then we look at changes to how changes within the ISMS would have to be, managed. Basically, making sure that any changes that happens within the ISMS, it's planned and executed. Basically, that is it. I know planning alone can take us the whole day to discuss. So this is the very high level conversation we're having here. Then move on to the implement part of this requirement, which is the do. So here you are operationalizing what you've planned in 6. Basically, that's what it is. So as I indicated, we're supposed to document the risk assessment plan, risk assessment process, risk treatment process, establish our information security objective, etc. Now, under 8 or under implement or do, just understanding from that perspective, from the implement point of view, you need to conduct the risk assessment itself as you documented in 6. Then you develop risk treatment plan in line with the output of the risk assessment. Then implement the risk treatment plan. It's not only just about developing the plan, but implementing a risk treatment plan and also continuously monitoring, undertaking risk assessment, monitoring the risk treatment plan, and improving your risk posture. Basically, that's what the implement phase is doing. Then the maintain and check, which is the clause 9, it's all about evaluating the performance of the ISMS. And in doing this, in meeting this requirement, one will need to monitor and measure the objectives that we've set in clause 6. I mentioned that we needed to set objectives and how we're going to achieve them. So we need to monitor and measure how those objectives are doing, as well as other controls that we deem fit as an organization want to monitor and measure how those controls are doing. And I must mention that in the do phase, we mentioned the term risk treatment, and you need controls to mitigate risk. And that's why it's important to check how those controls are performing. Are the controls mitigating the risk that you intended to use it for? Basically, that is it. And you should also be able to conduct internal audit of the ISMS in line with what the standard talks about. And we also need to conduct management review. Management review is basically a meeting with management or top management of the organization to discuss issues that are relevant to the ISMS. And obviously, it needs to be in line with the requirements 9 of the standard. Basically, that is it. Then we move on to the continual improve part of it, which basically clause 10 deals with it. So this one requires that, at every point in time, there's a need to improve the ISMS. We may not be perfect from the establishment phase, through to the implementation to maintenance. There's a need to continually improve the ISMS because there's a belief that we all need to grow. We can't be perfect at any point in time. So there's a need to constantly have initiations or take actions to improve the ISMS as a whole. Then it also requires that when non-conformity is identified, when any deviation from the requirement of the standard is identified, actions are taken to correct them and prevent them from recurring. So in a nutshell, this is, and at the high level, this is how we meet the first part or the first part of the requirements, clause 4.4 of 27,001. And as Yvette mentioned, whatever we are saying here is applicable to any type A standard because it's the same language. It's just the subject matter or the subject that changes, whether it's service management, what is business continuity, quality management, etc. So it's a purely an ISO conversation we are having here. Basically, that is it. So let's look at how we can conform to the second part of the requirements, which has to do with identifying the ISMS processes that we need and how these ISMS processes interact. So what you can see here is a graphical representation of how we want to meet this requirement. This is ours, let me put it this way. We can do this in so many ways. You can decide to use a worksheet for it. You can decide to use a word processor for it, but we are using graphic to represent this. Now, we need to identify all the ISMS processes, or let me say key. Of course, you can't be exhaustive at any point in time, and that's why the continuous improvement conversation comes in. So when we are starting from scratch or afresh, let me put it this way, we need to identify key ISMS processes. And so for each of the boxes you see here, these are ISMS processes. And of course, most of them are applicable to any management system. Most of them are applicable, especially the one on the my extreme right, so your extreme right of the screen, from performance evaluation to the bottom and even to the left side of it. So now let me walk you through this. So let's take, for example, risk assessment on the left side. Risk assessment serves as an input to risk treatment. If you don't do risk assessment, you can't undertake your risk treatment. Basically, that is it. And putting policy together or developing policy or reviewing policy is an action or it's a form of treating risk. Then, if you look at change management, backup management, supply management, contracting process, employee screening, they are forms of identifying risk. Basically, that is it. So they are form of risk assessment. Basically, that is it. Then, if you take access management and password management, access right, they have a relationship. Because if you want to manage access properly, especially if they are IT-related systems, which we need to, take care of logical access, let me put it this way. Password management is very key. Access right review is very key. And access management in itself also helps in managing assets of the organization, because whether it is physical or non-physical assets, if access is not properly managed, it can cause chaos. So let's say, for example, if you want to properly manage your assets in the DC data center or server room, you can call it, and access to that facility is not properly secured, then there's going to be chaos. Basically, that is it. Then if you take training and awareness, in fact, it has multiple connections here. We didn't want it to look clumsy. That's why you see it simple like this. Almost all of them have a connection with training and awareness, because for you to be able to ensure incident is properly managed, access is properly managed, there is a need to create awareness. If you want to ensure change management is properly executed, supply management is properly undertaken, there's a need to train the required team members or stakeholders. There's a need to create awareness in that space. So that linkage is there. And if you look at the relationship between training and awareness and communication, you're saying that communication is a form of training and awareness. So there's a relationship there. And when you look at the relationship between policy development, review, and communication, if you develop the policy and you don't communicate, then nothing will happen. Now, it's as good as no policy. Basically, that's the point here. Now, if you take system monitoring, incident management, security testing, and logging, they are all forms, or they have a relationship with ensuring system monitoring. Basically, that is it. So if you monitor system, it helps you to identify incidents and ensure timely resolution of those incidents. Security testing is a form of monitoring systems. Logging is a form of monitoring system. Logging, some may call it audit trailing. So let me use that term here. Now, system monitoring helps us to identify vulnerability and manage those vulnerabilities. And asset management also has a relationship with vulnerability management, because if you manage your asset properly, you're able to identify any weaknesses or any weakness within the asset and ensure they are properly maintained or mitigated. Now, let's take information classification, or let me even start from information deletion. Now, information deletion has a relationship with information retention process and information classification process. Please bear with me if I'm not adding the suffix processes, but it's the same conversation we're having here. So for you to be able to know when and how, in fact, let me say when to delete information, you should know the retention, you should understand the retention process. Basically, that is it. So information retention process of the organization feeds into the information deletion process. And likewise, if you don't classify the information, if you don't understand the information classification process, you wouldn't be able to adequately delete information, because when you deleting information, you delete it, or you dispose the information of based on the classification. So the classification level will let you know the extent to which, that data or information would have to be disposed of. So for example, if you are dealing with information you've classified as public within your organization, the way you will dispose it of or delete it wouldn't be the same as information you've classified as confidential, irrespective of the form they take. Now, let me move into internal audit on the last column. So what we are saying is that internal audit helps to identify. So we're talking of internal audit of any management system or 27001 in our case. So helps us to identify non-conformities within the management system, and also help in preferring the necessary treatment plan for those entities that have been identified. And internal audit also serves as input to management review. If you look at clause 9 of the standard, internal audit is supposed to be findings or outcome of internal audit is supposed to be a conversation that we need to have in the management review meeting. Likewise, even non-conformities that might have been identified and action plans for them. So that relationship is there. And management review also helps in continually improving the ISMS. So it has a relationship with the continual improvement process within the organization's ISMS. And performance evaluation of the ISMS also serves as an input into the continual improvement process. Likewise, security testing within the organization's systems also helps or has a connection or relationship with the continual improvement. Now, what you see here, the lines or the arrows you see, in fact, they can be bi-directional. You can place them any way so far as your organization is concerned. Let me put this way. So this is, you can see this as a baseline or a baseline template. You can modify it in so many ways. And as I earlier mentioned, you can even use a worksheet where you can, on one column, you list the processes, and the subsequent columns, you state the relationship with, the other processes. Let me put it this way. So this is not cast in stone. You can, vary it in so many ways to ensure it suits your environment. And I must mention that we've taken time to have this conversation, because in our practice, we've seen that organizations, most organizations, let me put it this way, even those who are matured, they tend to have challenge meeting this requirement. So this template is yours. You can modify it any way you want to do it. You can change the arrows. That is it. So basically, that is it. So this brings us to the end of our presentation. So the floor is open. If there are questions, comments, and even suggestions, please raise up your hand. We'll unmute you. You ask a question, then we take it out from there. I can see there are also questions in the Q&A box. So let us try to respond to a few of the questions in the Q&A box. Then we will come to those who raised their hands. So there's one from anonymous attendee. He or she is asking, how can clause 4.4 be embedded into Ghana's national digital transformation blueprint to ensure resilient and secure public sector systems? Then it moves on to ask another question. I want to treat them together. What frameworks are needed to harmonize clause 4.4 implementation across ECOWAS member states to support regional cybersecurity maturity? So as we've indicated, to respond to you, as we indicated, the 4.4, in fact, see 4.4 as the standard itself. Let me put it this way. So as I think Mr. France mentioned, if you look at the CAC's directive, it has a key linkage. The Directive for the Protection of Critical Information Infrastructure and other directives or guidelines they provided to some critical information infrastructure organizations. They are properly aligned with the requirements of ISO 27001. So there's another question from Constant Abeko. So Constant is asking, is there a general period for information retention? Oh, okay. So no. So what happens is, when it comes to information retention, I'll say primarily two things come to play. The first thing is, what is regulation or legislation saying? Where you find yourself. In fact, it's even three. Let me take you three. First one is, what is the law saying about it? So in Ghana, it is the Act 772, that's the Electronic Transaction Act, which spells, I think, 7 years of retention for electronic records. If you take Act 843, the Data Protection Act, it is silent. It makes reference to other acts, which is the 772. If you take 1038, it's also silent on that. So in Ghana, if you're talking about a law or act on data retention, then we can refer to the 772, the Electronic Transaction Act, which means I think it's seven years for that. That's one. Then there can be regulations. So BOG, Bank of Ghana, or Cybersecurity Authority can come up with a regulation that for this type of data, the retention should be X, Y, years. Basically, that is it. Then the third one is contractual arrangements. If there's a contractual arrangement between you and your customers, and that arrangement does not go against a regulation or an act or a law, let me put it this way, then that retention period needs to be taken into consideration. Then the final one, the organization's own requirement. The organization can decide that, okay, for me, for this type of data, every 5 years, we need to discard it, or archive it. After 4 years of archival, we discard it. So there's no hard and fast rule about that. So there's also another question from Abenya Adote. It says information retention period depends on the number of, okay, good. I think that's additional to this. So Henry Kwete, if I've mentioned your name right, he says, please, can you clarify what internal auditors are supposed to do with regards to the clause 4.4? Regards to the clause 4.4 is concerned. Okay, good. So as part, I wish I could get a clarity to that, but still I'll attempt to answer in both sides. So here, in the conversation we are having here, if there's an internal auditor here, the internal auditor is meant to understand how he or she is supposed to audit this requirement. That's key. And in the auditing of this requirement, the auditor would have to ensure that the requirement is, adequately met. And for an auditor to ensure it's adequately met, it's not a matter of validating it on the face of clause 4.4. No, it's a matter of validating it on the other clauses we've seen, clause 6, clause 8, clause 9, and clause 10. So if the auditor is convinced that for 6, 8, 9, 10, the organization has adequately met those requirements, it's a matter of validating the other leg, which is the processes and their interaction. So basically that is it. So Evans also say, I wonder why are they silent? It should be at least 10 years. Okay, so for that one, I'm sure you're talking about the retention period. That's what it is. So I think these are all the questions. Okay, sorry. So let me take the last one from here. Then we can go to those who may want to speak. So anonymous attendee is saying, is asking, on the average and through practical experience, how many years is an organization expected to show complete conformance to clause 4.4? I like this question. Okay. So from where I sit as a consultant, I will tell you that by the time you are through with your implementation, so here we are talking about adequate implementation of your ISMS, you would have at least reasonably, let me put it this way, reasonably met the requirement of clause 4.4. But if you are looking at, as I indicated earlier, there's no perfection at any point in time. That's why continuous improvement is there. So to go beyond that, I think within, let's say, your 3-year cycle, it should be perfect. Let me use that term, although near perfect. Let me use that term. It should be near perfect, but at least for conformance purpose, if the ISMS is adequately implemented, by the time you are done with the implementation, you should be reasonably conform to the requirements of 4.4. So basically, that is it. Are there, I'm not seeing any hands up. Let me see. Please, if you want to ask any question, you can raise your hand. I'm not seeing any hand up. Not seeing any hand up. Okay. So we'll just check to be sure. Okay, good. I'm seeing one here. Okay, so this is just a moment. Just a moment. So yes, Abenadote, just a moment. Please, you should be able to ask a question. Abena. Abenya, sorry, Abenya, I meant.
Well, good morning. Am I audible?
Yes, sir, you are.
Okay, so Sheriff, thank you very much for that wonderful presentation on the clause 4.4.
Welcome,
Very
sir.
well explained. So, from your experience as one of the big fours and your audit experiences, how have you seen the involvement of maybe executive management in maturing the clause 4.4 over your experience in the industry? How have you seen them getting involved? Most of the time, something that it is for the lower level management staff to do and report to them.
Okay, thank you. So the point here is in my practice, I've seen top management demonstrate this not through the process you see here, through leadership and also resourcing. I mean, for the fact that the ISMS is being established and implemented, maintained, and being improved tells you that resources have gone in there. And when I say resources, we are looking at human resource. The provider, people with the requisite competence to undertake the role. Two, money has gone through. It's not cheap implementing this standard. Three, information has also gone through. So they might have provided the necessary support, and also some organization or top management show leadership. So leadership by way of communicating, assigning authority, assigning responsibilities within the ISMS. And if they do this, what I've told you, the rest are not big deal, because if they have shown the authority or delegated authority, they are showing leadership, they provided the resources, then I'll say the rest are cocoa. Let me put it this way. Hope it's clear, sir.
Okay, that's fine. But I see one follow-up.
Mhm.
We are talking about maturity.
Correct.
If you look at the various models like the CMMI that talks about maturity levels 0 to 5, we expect that clause 4.4 should be moving towards level 4 or level 5 over time. Sometimes we hear from the industry player like you guys that organizations struggle to cross level 3. At most, they get to level 3, and getting to level 4 and 5 is extremely difficult. I don't know whether you can share your thoughts on that.
Oh, okay. So the point is, if you are applying CMMI in this conversation, it depends on the subject at hand. Let me put it this way. But let me bring it home to ISMS implementation. The point is, when it comes to maturity of an organization to a management system, it depends on where the organization finds itself. If I'm at 0, it will take me some time to get to 4. If I'm at 3, it will take me a shorter time to get to 4. Of course, there are other factors at play, resourcing, and a few other things at play. So we cannot maybe apply that generally to every organization. No, it depends on where you sit. I can't remember that. I would say that that's the shortest project I've been involved. It was a bank. I was part of the team supporting and implementing ISO 27001, and it took me like took the team half of the duration that typically we would use for any organization, because the bank was already matured. I mean, so it depends on where the original state of the organization that will determine how long and how fast, let me put this way, it will get to the higher level of maturity. Hope you are good, sir.
I'm good, but let me just add one more thing.
Okay.
Sheriff, if you remember on the first day of the cybersecurity, the launching of the Cybersecurity Awareness Month for October, the Joint Cybersecurity Committee was formed. For me, I see that committee as the steering committee for the country, steering committee for all the various CIIs for the country, such that we expect them to maybe put some little pressure on the key stakeholders or management who are in charge of various establishments to ensure that they provide the necessary resources in terms of people, process, and technology to mature the cybersecurity space. So I'm wondering how they're going to go about doing their work. If some organizations are at level 0, how long it will take before they mature to 1, 2, 3, 4? How some will move from 3 to 4? Sometimes there are so many factors that they are not in control of that. So I just want to bring this into your perspective for us to see how the Joint Cybersecurity Committee can navigate through this journey.
Okay, so I wish the authority can speak to it, but I mean for the JCC, they are supporting the authority. They are supporting the cybersecurity authority. Of course, they have their mandate in line with Act 1038. So I honestly don't want to play in there, but I wish the regulator. Our rep of the regulator can touch on it, but I know they work in tandem with authority to come up with all the things we are seeing here. I mean, it's just that we don't see if JCC brings up an initiation or whatever or innovation. JCC cannot come out and tell us, or whatever they do, they can't come out and tell us. They can only speak to us through the authority as an entity. So basically, that's what I can say here. Thank you. Any other question? Let me check.
Thank you very much.
Welcome, sir. Okay, so I think we've exhausted our questions. So at this point in time, I want to thank you very much for your time on this webinar. If there's any question in the future, you can get in touch with us through our emails. Yvette, please, are you able to project our contact and our email addresses? If there are any questions, comments, clarification, please get in touch with us. We'll be able to help you on that. Thank you once again. And there is a link in the chat. Please give us your feedback of this webinar to improve ourselves. As I indicated, continual improvement is key. So there's a link in the chat. Please click on it. Let's have your feedback. Our contacts are also displayed on the screen. You can send us email, you can call us, and whatever conversation it is, we can have it. Thank you and have a nice day. Bye-bye.
And how do you do that? Well, it's complicated. You need to consider every aspect of the way your business runs. That's why Deloitte focuses on helping you to manage and augment your most important asset: people. Ensure your core operations are fit for purpose. Elevate every experience for your customers. Make technology work for you. And develop strategies that not only transform your business, but shape the entire market. It takes complex connections to create simple, lasting solutions.
If you're in business, somebody, somewhere, is watching you. But that's no bad thing, because we live in an increasingly complex world. A world of greater governance and tighter regulation. The more rules there are, the easier it is to fall foul of them, even if you don't mean to. And at Deloitte, this is where we come in.